Wait, let me get this straight. Admiral Ferencala's harmonic voice crackled through the communication array, each word a precisely modulated frequency that made the bridge crystals resonate. You're telling me that the humans surrendered by playing what they call smooth jazz? Commander Vexthon's response carried undertones of bewilderment that would have been impossible to hide from any Sonoran. Affirmative, Admiral. Our entire advanced squadron is currently incapacitated. They've been drifting in formation for 6 hours, completely unresponsive to combat frequencies. Define incapacitated. Commander. Well, sir, the pause that followed was filled with a kind of harmonic static that only occurred when a Sonoran was deeply embarrassed. They appeared to be swaying, and our combat psychologists report that Squadron Leader Kethvar has been detected humming. The silence that followed this revelation was so profound that 3 junior officers' crystalline organs nearly shut down from the absence of sound. Admiral Ferencala's voice, when it finally came, was barely above a whisper which, for a species that communicated through subsonic frequencies, was roughly equivalent to screaming. Humming? 12 hours earlier, Captain Yuki Nakamura had been having what she would later describe as the weirdest damn briefing of my career in the cramped command center of the Librarian. The ship itself was humanity's most experimental vessel, if you could even call it ship. To most observers, it looked more like a floating recording studio that had been accidentally launched into space. So let me make sure I understand our mission parameters, Yuki said, reviewing the holographic display floating above the briefing table. We're supposed to engage a fleet of aliens whose entire civilization is based on sound. Correct? Nodded Dr. Marcus Webb, the civilian xenopsychologist who'd somehow been given authority over this operation. His thick-rimmed glasses caught the light as he adjusted them, a nervous habit that had become more frequent as they'd approached the outer rim of the solar system. And our primary weapon is— Yuki paused, looking at the technical specifications one more time. A really good sound system? The most sophisticated acoustic manipulation array ever constructed, Webb corrected, capable of producing any frequency between 0.1 and 100,000 hertz, with precision down to the individual wavelength. Lieutenant Sofia Rodriguez, the Librarian's communication officer, looked up from her console. Sir, I hate to interrupt, but we're getting some interesting chatter from the Sonoran fleet. They're placing bets. Bets? Yuki raised an eyebrow. On how quickly we'll surrender using their traditional capitulation frequency. The current favorite seems to be before they even see us. Odds are running about 15 to 1. Dr. Webb smiled, not a pleasant expression. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Yuki had known Marcus Webb for 3 years, ever since he'd been assigned to her unit as a cultural liaison. In that time, she'd learned to recognize several distinct types of Webb smiles. The I have a theory smile, the this is going to be interesting smile, and the oh, you poor bastards have no idea what's coming smile. This was definitely the third type. Doctor, she said carefully, what exactly did your research turn up about Sonoran psychology? Webb's grin widened. Did you know that their entire evolutionary development took place on a planet with constant seismic activity? Their hearing is so sensitive that they can detect tectonic shifts from thousands of miles away. They literally navigate by sound. That's fascinating, but their military doctrine, Webb continued, clearly enjoying himself, is based entirely on acoustic warfare. They've conquered 847 different species, using what they call harmonic dominance. Basically, they show up, make a lot of noise, and everyone else surrenders because they can't compete with the volume. Sophia looked up again. Dr. Webb, I'm reading their approach vector. They're coming in hot, full acoustic assault formation. Our sensors are picking up what sounds like, it sounds like someone crossed a death metal concert with jet engine and then fed it steroids. The sound reached them a moment later, even through the Librarian's heavily shielded hull. It was, Yuki had to admit, pretty intimidating. The kind of noise that made you want to surrender just to make it stop. Now, Webb said, his voice barely audible over the approaching cacophony. Observe. He pressed a single button on his tablet. The universe went quiet. Not just quiet, silent. The kind of absolute, perfect silence that most humans had never experienced. No hum of electronics. No whisper of air circulation. No distant throb of the ship's engines. Nothing. Jesus. Sophia whispered, and even her whisper seemed to be absorbed by the emptiness around them. Phase 1, Webb announced. Total acoustic dampening field. Radius of approximately 50,000 kilometers. Nothing gets in, nothing gets out. Through the view screen, they could see the Sonoran fleet approaching. Massive crystalline vessels that looked like someone had grown cathedrals in space. As they hit the edge of the silence field, something extraordinary happened. They stopped. Not gradually, not tactically, they just stopped. 37 warships, each one the size of a city block, drifting motionless in the void. Phase 2, Webb said, and there was definitely mischief in his voice now. The music started softly, so softly that for a moment, Yuki wasn't sure she was hearing anything at all. Then the saxophone came in, smooth, mellow, the kind of sound you'd hear in an elevator or a dentist's office. Completely harmless. Completely human. Kenny G, Webb explained helpfully. Specifically, Songbird, from his 1987 album Duotones. Fascinating choice for first contact, don't you think? Through the tactical display, they watched as the Sonoran fleet began to change. The rigid military formation started to loosen. Ships that had been holding precise attack vectors began to drift, their movements becoming almost languid. Sir, Sophia said, her voice carrying a note of amazement, I'm picking up transmissions from the Sonoran fleet. They're asking each other what's happening to them. Patch it through, Yuki ordered. The bridge filled with translated Sonoran voices. Their usual harsh harmonic structure somehow softened. Squad leader, I'm experiencing unusual psychological phenomena. Affirmative, pilot Kexvan. I too am feeling peaceful. Is this some form of human psychic attack? Unknown. I find myself contemplating the beauty of nebula formations. Should we be concerned that I'm no longer thinking about conquest? Dr. Webb was practically glowing with satisfaction. You see, Captain, Sonoran psychology evolved around constant stimulation. Their entire culture is built on aggressive harmonic competition. But their brains' magnificent crystalline structures really are actually incredibly sophisticated frequency processors. When you introduce them to something like smooth jazz, you're drugging them, Yuki realized. With music, I prefer to think of it as aggressive audio therapy. Look at the biometric readings. The tactical display showed heat signatures from the Sonoran ships, and they were changing. The rapid, spiky patterns of aggressive alien physiology were smoothing out, becoming almost meditative. My God, Sophia breathed. They're actually relaxing. That's when Admiral Thren Kala's transmission came through. Human vessel. The translated voice boomed across all frequencies, though it somehow managed to sound less intimidating than before. I am Admiral Thren Kala of the Sonoran Harmonic Fleet. You will explain this, what is happening to my warriors. Yuki looked at Webb, who gestured for her to take the lead. Admiral Thren Kala. She responded, try to keep her voice steady. This is Captain Yuki Nakamura of Earth Vessel the Librarian. We're currently engaged in what we call cultural exchange. Cultural exchange? You have rendered my fleet completely combat ineffective. Have we? Yuki asked innocently. I was under the impression that your species valued harmonic communication. We're simply sharing some of our harmonic traditions. There was a long pause. When Thren Kala's voice returned, it carried a note of confusion that the translation software was struggling to process. This is not combat music. No, Yuki agreed. It's not. Then what is its purpose? Dr. Webb leaned forward and activated his own microphone. Admiral, this is Dr. Marcus Webb, xenocultural specialist. The music you're experiencing is what humans call ambient sound. We use it to create calm, peaceful environments. For relaxation, contemplation, and emotional well-being. The silence that followed this explanation lasted nearly 30 seconds, an eternity in interspecies communication. You use sound for peace? Among other things, yes. But sound is for dominance, for establishing territorial boundaries, for demonstrating superior harmonic complexity. Well, Webb said thoughtfully, that's certainly one way to use it. Captain Nakamura watched the tactical display as something unprecedented began to happen. The Sonoran ships weren't just drifting. They were actively moving into new formations, patterns that looked less like battle groups and more like, well, like they were trying to optimize their listening experience. Sir, Sophia reported, I'm detecting unusual harmonic resonances from the Sonoran fleet. They appear to be harmonizing. Harmonizing? With the music. They're creating complementary frequencies that enhance the overall acoustic experience. Dr. Webb's smile reached maximum intensity. Magnificent. Absolutely magnificent. Admiral Frenkala's voice came through again, but this time it was different. Softer somehow, though still carrying the complex harmonic undertones of Sonoran speech. Dr. Webb, Captain Nakamura, I must ask you something. This sound you are sharing with us, it makes us feel strange. How so, Admiral? Yuki asked. We feel less angry, less driven to conquer. Is this some form of mind control? Webb exchanged a look with Nakamura. Admiral, may I ask you a personal question? You may. When was the last time you and your crew experienced true quiet? Not strategic silence, not the pause between attacks, but genuine, peaceful quiet? The pause that followed was so long that Sophia checked her equipment to make sure they were still connected. We Sonorans do not experience quiet. Dr. Webb, our world, our bodies, our very thoughts are sound. To be without sound is to be nothing. And yet, Webb observed gently, your crew is currently experiencing something very close to quiet, aren't they? The music we're sharing, it's not aggressive, not competing for acoustic dominance. It's just there, like a gentle background to thought. Yes, Threnkala admitted, and there was something like wonder in the translated voice. It is like discovering that there are colors we have never seen. That's when things got interesting. Sir, Sophia announced, I'm picking up a massive harmonic shift from the Sonoran fleet. Oh my God. What is it, Lieutenant? They're composing. The entire fleet is creating an original harmonic composition based on the jazz progression. It's actually beautiful. Through the view screen, they could see the Sonoran ships moving in complex patterns, their crystalline hulls glowing with internal light as they generated intricate sound waves that complemented and enhanced the simple human melody. What had started as a single saxophone solo was becoming a symphony involving 37 alien warships. Dr. Webb was furiously taking notes. This is unprecedented. Absolutely unprecedented. They're not just experiencing music, they're participating in it, creating collaborative art across species boundaries. Admiral Frenkala's voice came through again, but now it was accompanied by the harmonic contributions of the entire fleet, a complex, beautiful soundscape that somehow made the simple jazz melody profound. Captain Nakamura, Dr. Webb, I believe we may have been approaching the situation incorrectly. How so, Admiral? We came here to demonstrate our acoustic superiority, to force your submission through harmonic dominance. But what you have shared with us, this is not about dominance at all, is it? Yuki looked at Webb, who nodded encouragingly. No, Admiral. It's about harmony, literally and figuratively. We have conquered 847 worlds, using sound as a weapon. But you use sound as a gift. Sometimes, Yuki admitted. We also use it as entertainment, as communication, as art, as memory. Humans have many relationships with sound. Show us, Threnkala said suddenly. Show us more. Dr. Webb's fingers flew over his tablet. What would you like to hear, Admiral? Everything. We want to hear everything. What followed was perhaps the strangest first contact scenario in human history. For the next 6 hours, the Librarian and the Sonoran Harmonic Fleet engaged in what could only be described as the galaxy's first interspecies music appreciation seminar. They started with the basics. Classical symphonies that made the Sonoran crews contemplate the mathematical relationships between harmony and emotion. They moved through jazz, which fascinated the aliens with its complex improvisational structures. Rock music initially confused them, until they realized it was humans using sound to express rebellion and energy, at which point several Sonoran ship commanders began experimenting with power chords. But it was when they reached ambient electronic music that something truly extraordinary happened. This, Admiral Ferencala announced, as the ethereal sounds of Brian Eno's music for airports filled the space between the fleets. This is what we have been missing. What do you mean, Admiral? Dr. Webb asked. For millennia, we have used sound as a tool of dominance. The loudest, the most complex, the most aggressive, these were the measures of success. But this music, it asks nothing of us. It simply exists, creating space for thought, for contemplation, for peace. Captain Nakamura found herself moved by the genuine emotion in the alien's voice. Admiral, what will you do now? Your mission was to conquer Earth. Our mission, Ferencala replied thoughtfully, was to demonstrate Sonoran superiority through acoustic dominance. But you have shown us that there are forms of acoustic achievement we never imagined. We cannot conquer what we wish to learn from. The Sonoran fleet began to change formation again, but this time it was clearly non-threatening. The ships arranged themselves in a complex geometric pattern that, Sophia realized, was designed to create optimal acoustic resonance for the music still playing between them. Captain Nakamura, Admiral Ferencala said, I have a proposal. I'm listening, Admiral. The Sonoran Empire has spent 1,000 years conquering worlds to expand our harmonic territories. But what if we've been thinking about this incorrectly? What if the goal should not be conquest, but collaboration? Dr. Webb leaned forward eagerly. What are you suggesting, Admiral? I am suggesting that perhaps it is time for the Sonoran Empire to learn a new kind of harmony. Not the harmony of dominance, but the harmony of, what is a human term, jamming? Yuki couldn't help but smile. Admiral, I think that might be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. As if in response to her words, the combined human-Sonoran musical collaboration swelled to a crescendo that seemed to make the very stars resonate. For the first time in galactic history, the sound of war had been replaced by the sound of wonder. And in the depths of space, between two very different species discovering they had more in common than they'd ever imagined, Kenny G's saxophone continued to play, no longer a weapon of mass relaxation, but a bridge between worlds. The conquest of Earth would have to wait. The Sonoran Empire had just discovered jazz fusion, and Admiral Ferencala was pretty sure his crew was going to need at least a few decades to properly explore the implications. After all, there are 847 conquered worlds that probably deserve to hear Songbird at least once. Just to see what happened. 3 months later, Captain Yuki Nakamura was having what she would later describe as the most surreal staff meeting in the history of interstellar diplomacy aboard the newly commissioned Harmony Station, a joint human-Sonoran construct that looked like someone had crossed a space station with a recording studio and then decorated it with crystals. So let me get this straight, she said, reviewing the holographic reports floating around the conference table. The Gothic swarm attacked the Sonoran colony on Kepler for 42B with their standard terror scream tactics. Correct. Admiral Ferencala's harmonic voice resonated through the crystal formations that now served as his mobile command center. The Sonoran leader had taken to spending most of his time aboard the human station, claiming that the acoustic diversity helped him think more clearly. And your response was to counterattack with a collaborative cover of Bohemian Rhapsody, performed in 17 different harmonic layers. Squadron leader Kethvar added proudly. The former Sonoran warrior had become something of a musical prodigy, though his specialty was what humans had dubbed combat jazz, aggressive improvisational sessions that somehow managed to be both warlike and peaceful simultaneously. Dr. Webb, who had been promoted to Director of Xenocultural Integration, a position that hadn't existed before humans accidentally invented it, looked up from his tablet with barely contained glee. The results were unprecedented. Define unprecedented, Yuki said, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Well, Webb began, adjusting his glasses in that way that meant he was about to deliver news that would give her a headache. The Gothic swarm's entire attack formation stopped mid-assault to listen. Apparently, their species has been searching for what they call the perfect scream for the past 3,000 years. And Freddie Mercury's vocal range in the operatic section of Bohemian Rhapsody apparently qualifies as divine screaming in Gothic culture. They've declared Queen to be gods and have requested formal diplomatic relations with humanity for the express purpose of learning more about the sacred music of the celestial Freddie. Yuki put her head in her hands. Please tell me you're joking. I wish I were. But it gets better. The Gothic swarm has also formally apologized to the Sonoran Empire for what they now consider to have been 3 millennia of inadequate shrieking, and have requested joint musical collaboration to achieve true harmonic transcendence. Lieutenant Sofia Rodriguez, who had been promoted to Chief Communications Officer when it became clear that her job now involved translating between 17 different species with varying relationships to music, looked up from her console. "Sir, we're getting reports from across the galaxy. Word is spreading about what happened at Kepler 442b. "What kind of reports?" "Well, the crystalline hegemony has formally requested a meeting to discuss what they're calling rhythmic diplomacy. Apparently, they've been trying to communicate with other species through interpretive dance for centuries, but nobody understood what they were doing." Admiral Ferencala's harmonic laugh filled the room, a sound that had become much more frequent since his exposure to human comedy. "The crystallines have been trying to dance at us for 300 years. We thought it was some form of ritualized combat preparation. It gets stranger," Sophia continued. "The Hive Mind Collective has sent a formal inquiry about something called the multiplicative properties of harmonious thought. They want to know if music can help them think more efficiently." "And the void touched?" Yuki asked, dreading the answer. "They've declared music to be the anti-entropy and have requested immediate access to human death metal. Specifically, they want to know if we can teach them to scream at the heat death of the universe." Dr. Webb was practically vibrating with excitement. "This is it, Captain. This is exactly what I theorized might happen. We're witnessing the birth of a new form of interstellar diplomacy. Instead of conquest, expansion, or trade agreements, we're looking at cultural exchange on a scale never before seen in galactic history." "That's wonderful. Doctor," Yuki said carefully, "but I'm looking at reports here that suggest we might have accidentally started something much bigger than a cultural exchange program." She gestured to the holographic display, which showed a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. What had once been a patchwork of territorial boundaries and contested zones was now showing something entirely different. Streaming lines of communication, travel routes, and what appear to be concert schedules. "The Galactic Concert Tour," Webb said proudly. 18 species, 47 worlds, and a collaborative musical experience that's being broadcast across every inhabited system in the galaxy. "Doctor," Yuki said slowly, "are you telling me that we've accidentally turned interstellar politics into a music festival?" "Not accidentally," Webb corrected. "Inevitably. You see, Captain, what we discovered with the Sonorans was just the beginning. Every species we've encountered has some relationship with ordered sound, what we call music. The Gothic swarm's terror screams are actually a form of emotional expression. The crystalline hegemony's combat dances are sophisticated rhythmic communication. Even the void-touched entropy wails are an attempt to create harmony in the face of cosmic chaos." Admiral Ferencala's voice carried a note of wonder that the translation system was still learning to process. "Dr. Webb is correct, Captain. In the past 3 months, we have learned more about galactic civilization than in the previous 3 centuries of conquest. It appears that the universe is full of musicians who simply didn't know they were making music." "Sir," Sophia interrupted, "I'm getting an urgent transmission from Earth Command." "Put it through." The holographic display shifted to show Admiral Rebecca Parker, the director of Earth's Interstellar Defense Initiative, sitting in what appeared to be a much more traditional military briefing room. Her expression was a complex mixture of pride, bewilderment, and the kind of exhaustion that came from trying to explain the impossible to bureaucrats. "Captain Nakamura," Admiral Parker began, "I'm going to need you to explain to me how a single experimental vessel with a crew of 12 has managed to accidentally create the galaxy's first interspecies music festival." "Well, Admiral, it's a bit complicated. Try me." Yuki looked around the room at her strange collection of allies. Dr. Webb with his perpetual expression of scientific delight. Sophia surrounded by communication equipment that was now handling diplomatic channels with 17 different species, and Admiral Ferencala, whose crystalline form was literally glowing with harmonic resonance. "Admiral," she said finally, "I think we may have discovered that the universe is a lot more musical than anyone expected." "Explain." Dr. Webb leaned forward. "Admiral Parker, what Captain Nakamura is trying to say is that we've stumbled onto something fundamental about sapient life. Every species we've encountered has developed some form of organized sound, music, harmony, rhythm, even aggressive noise. It appears to be a universal constant, like mathematics or physics. And the implications of this are, well, Webb continued, his excitement building. If music is universal, then it might be the key to universal communication. Not just language translation, but emotional and cultural translation. When the Gothic swarm heard Queen, they didn't just understand the music. They understood something about human emotion, human creativity, human soul. Admiral Parker was quiet for a long moment. Doctor, are you suggesting that music is some kind of universal language? I'm suggesting that music might be the universe's way of ensuring that different forms of consciousness can find common ground. Think about it. Every species that develops space travel has to understand mathematics, physics, engineering, but every species that develops complex culture also develops music. It's not a coincidence. Sir, Sophia added, I should mention that we're now receiving formal diplomatic contact requests from species that have never communicated with anyone before. The Quantum Collective just sent us a message that consists entirely of mathematical equations that, when graphed, form a melody to Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Admiral Parker rubbed her temples. Captain Nakamura, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I want a direct answer. In your professional opinion, has humanity accidentally become the galaxy's unofficial cultural ambassadors? Yuki considered this. Around her, the strange harmony of interstellar diplomacy continued. Alien voices discussing chord progressions, the gentle hum of crystalline beings learning to beatbox, and the distant sound of what appeared to be a void touched attempting to sing the blues. Admiral, she said finally, I think humanity has accidentally become something much more important than that, which is the galaxy's first interspecies band. Admiral Parker stared at her for a long moment. Captain, are you telling me that Earth's primary strategic advantage in galactic politics is that we're good at making music? Not just good at making music, Admiral, good at sharing music, at collaboration, at taking different sounds and finding ways to make them work together. Dr. Webb nodded enthusiastically. It's the fundamental difference between human and Sonoran approaches to sound. Admiral, the Sonorans use music for dominance, to prove superiority. Humans use music for connection, to create shared experiences. And now, Admiral Frenkala's harmonic voice filled the room. Now, Admiral Parker, we are teaching the galaxy to sing together, not the song of conquest, but the song of cooperation. It is the most beautiful thing we have ever heard. Through the viewports of Harmony Station, they could see the impossible sight that had become routine over the past 3 months. Dozens of different species vessels moving in complex patterns around the station, their various forms of communication and expression combining to create something that was part music, part light show, and part diplomatic summit. Admiral, Yuki said, I think we may have accidentally solved the problem of galactic civilization by turning it into a concert, by proving that the universe wants to make music together. It just needed someone to show it how. Admiral Parker was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried a note of wonder that reminded Yuki why she joined the military in the first place. Captain Nakamura, Dr. Webb, Admiral Frenkala, are you telling me that the key to galactic peace is a really good sound system? Among other things, Webb said with a grin, yes. Then I have only one question for you. What's that, Admiral? When do we get to hear the whole galaxy sing together? Admiral Frenkala's harmonic laugh filled the room once more. Admiral Parker, if Dr. Webb's calculations are correct, that concert is scheduled for next Tuesday. We are calling it the Universal Symphony. Every species, every world, every conscious being in the galaxy, all making music together for the first time in cosmic history. And if it works, then we'll have proved that the universe itself is musical, Webb said, and that maybe, just maybe, the point of consciousness isn't to conquer or consume, but to harmonize. Admiral Parker smiled, the first genuine expression of joy Yuki had seen from her in months. Well then, Captain, I suppose we'd better make sure Earth brings its A-game. Any requests, Admiral? Something that'll make the whole galaxy want to dance. As if in response to her words, the combined voices of 17 different species began to harmonize around them, creating something that had never existed before, the sound of universe learning to sing. And in the depths of space, between species that had never imagined they could find common ground, music continued to play, no longer a weapon or a tool, but a bridge between every star, every world, every conscious being that had ever wondered if they were alone in the cosmic dark. The answer, it turned out, was as simple as a song. Now they just had to teach the galaxy how to dance.